CPR while rushing to shore. Despite frantic efforts to revive him, Steve Irwin was pronounced dead shortly after. The entire incident was captured on film, making it the only known fatal stingray attack ever recorded on video. However, the footage has never been publicly released and was destroyed at the request of Irwin's family. The shocking death made headlines worldwide. Millions of fans who had watched Irwin fearlessly handle deadly crocodiles and venomous snakes were stunned that he died from an animal considered relatively harmless. In the aftermath, Irwin's family continued his conservation work through the Australia Zoo and Wildlife Warriors organization. Bruce Lee. On July 20th, 1973, 32-year-old Bruce Lee was in Hong Kong working on his upcoming film Game of Death. The martial arts superstar and international icon appeared to be in perfect health and peak physical condition. That afternoon, Lee attended a meeting at the apartment of actress Betty Ting Pei to discuss the film. Around 7 p.m., Lee complained of a headache. Ting Pei gave him a tablet of Equagesic, a prescription painkiller containing aspirin and a tranquilizer. Lee took the medication and lay down to rest in a bedroom. Hours passed. When others tried to wake Lee for a dinner meeting, he would not respond. Ting Pei and producer Raymond Chow attempted to rouse him without success. They called Lee's personal physician, who arrived and spent 10 minutes trying to revive him. An ambulance rushed Lee to Queen Elizabeth Hospital, but doctors were unable to revive him. Bruce Lee was pronounced dead at age 32. An autopsy revealed that Lee's brain had swollen significantly, weighing about 13% more than normal. The official cause of death was cerebral edema, swelling of the brain. Pathologists determined that Lee had suffered a severe allergic reaction to one of the components in the Equagesic painkiller. His brain's hypersensitive reaction caused fatal swelling. The coroner's verdict was death by misadventure, meaning accidental death. The shocking death of someone so young and fit sparked immediate conspiracy theories. Over decades, people have speculated about everything from assassination by organized crime to a family curse, especially after Lee's son Brandon also died young in a freak accident. Some theories suggested heat stroke or dehydration. In 2022, researchers even proposed that Lee might have died from hyponatremia, essentially drinking too much water, which can also cause brain swelling. However, the official medical conclusion remains that Bruce Lee died from an allergic reaction to medication. Lee's death remains one of the most discussed and analyzed celebrity deaths, a medical mystery that continues generating theories decades later. Isadora Duncan. On September 14, 1927, 50-year-old Isadora Duncan was riding in an open-air sports car through Nice, France. The American-born dancer had revolutionized modern dance and was known for her flowing, dramatic style both on stage and in daily life. Duncan was a passenger in an Amilcar automobile driven by a young French-Italian mechanic named Benoit Falchetto. She was wearing one of her signature accessories, an extremely long, hand-painted silk scarf that hung loosely around her neck and trailed down her back. As the car accelerated down the street around 9 p.m., Duncan's scarf began flowing in the wind. The long fabric caught in the car's open-spoke rear wheel and became entangled in the rear axle. The scarf wound tightly around the rotating axle in an instant. Because the scarf was wrapped around Duncan's neck, the sudden tension yanked her violently out of the moving vehicle. The force was tremendous. Duncan was pulled backward out of the car and onto the cobblestone street. The scarf tightened around her neck like a noose, strangling her. Her neck broke from the violent force, killing her almost instantly. She was dragged several feet along the street before the driver realized what had happened and stopped the car. Witnesses described the horrific scene of Duncan lying on the cobblestones, the scarf still wrapped tightly around her neck and tangled in the car's axle. She died before medical help could arrive. The bizarre accident shocked the world and became immediate international news. Writer Gertrude Stein remarked that affectations can be dangerous, referring to Duncan's habit of wearing such dramatic flowing scarves. The manner of death was so unusual that medical professionals later coined the term Isadora Duncan syndrome to describe accidental strangulation by clothing or accessories caught in machinery. Media coverage at the time described the death as an extraordinary manner for such a celebrated artist to die. Duncan's tragic end became one of history's most famous freak accidents, a cautionary tale about how fashion choices and moving machinery can combine with fatal results. Anton Yelchin. On June 19, 2016, 27-year-old Anton Yelchin returned to his Los Angeles home in the early morning hours after a rehearsal with friends. The rising star, known for playing Pavel Chekhov in the rebooted Star Trek films, lived in a house on a steep driveway in Studio City. Yelchin drove a 2015 Jeep Grand Cherokee, equipped with a controversial electronic gear shifter. Around 1:10 a.m., Yelchin parked his SUV on the sloped driveway and exited the vehicle. What he apparently didn't realize was that the gear shifter's confusing design had left the vehicle in neutral rather than park. The Jeep began rolling backward down the incline. Yelchin was positioned between his vehicle and a brick mailbox pillar with a security fence when the SUV started moving. The Jeep pinned him against the brick pillar and metal security gate. The crushing force trapped his body between the vehicle and the solid structure. He was unable to escape or call for help. Friends found him several hours later, still pinned between his Jeep and the gate. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but Anton Yelchin was pronounced dead at the scene from traumatic asphyxia caused by the crushing compression. He had likely lived for several minutes while trapped, unable to breathe properly due to the pressure on his chest. The tragedy became even more disturbing when investigators revealed that Yelchin's vehicle was part of a massive recall. Fiat Chrysler had recalled over 1 million vehicles, including his model, because the electronic gear shifter design confused drivers. The shifter's design made it difficult to determine what gear the vehicle was actually in, leading to numerous rollaway incidents. Yelchin had received recall notices but hadn't yet brought his vehicle in for the repair. His parents filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Fiat Chrysler, arguing that the defective design killed their son. In 2018, the family reached a confidential settlement with the automaker. Yelchin's shocking death robbed Hollywood of a promising talent and became a cautionary tale that prompted automotive companies to reconsider electronic shifter designs. David Carradine. On June 4, 2009, 72-year-old David Carradine was staying at the Swiss Hotel Nilert Park in Bangkok, Thailand, while filming a movie. The actor, famous for the 1970s television series Kung Fu and Quentin Tarantino's Kill Bill films, had checked into the hotel alone. On the morning of June 4th, a hotel maid entered Carradine's room for housekeeping. She discovered his body in the closet. Carradine was found hanging with a rope around his neck and genitals. He was unclothed. Thai police were called immediately and began investigating. Initial reports suggested possible self-harm, but evidence quickly pointed toward a different conclusion. The scene indicated accidental death during a solitary intimate act gone wrong. Thai authorities determined that Carradine had died from asphyxiation, but not intentionally. A second autopsy conducted in the United States confirmed the findings: death by asphyxiation with no evidence of self-harm. The conclusion was that Carradine had accidentally strangled himself during a dangerous practice. The circumstances of Carradine's death ignited a massive media frenzy. Tabloid newspapers published graphic leaked photographs from the death scene, causing tremendous anguish to his family. Some family members initially refused to accept the findings and theorized about possible foul play, suggesting he might have been attacked. However, authorities in both Thailand and the United States consistently ruled the death accidental. Carradine's death certificate officially listed the cause as asphyxiation due to accident. The incident remains one of Hollywood's most startling celebrity deaths, demonstrating how a public figure's final moments can be shockingly at odds with their carefully cultivated image. Vic Morrow. On July 23, 1982, 53-year-old actor Vic Morrow was filming a night scene for Twilight Zone the movie at Indian Dunes in California. The scene depicted a Vietnam War scenario, with Morrow's character rescuing 2 children from a village under attack. The production had hired 2 child actors, 7-year-old Micah Ding Lei and 6-year-old Renee Shin-Yi Chen. The scene called for Morrow to carry the children through water while a helicopter hovered overhead and explosions detonated around them. Filming began around 2:20 a.m. The helicopter was flying at low altitude, only about 25 feet above the actors. Pyrotechnic charges were detonating to simulate artillery explosions. During one take, a series of explosions went off near the helicopter. The blast debris and shockwave caused the helicopter to lose control. The aircraft began spinning and descended rapidly. Within seconds, the helicopter crashed directly onto the 3 actors in the shallow water below. The main rotor blades were still spinning at full speed. Vic Morrow and one of the children were struck by the rotor blades and killed instantly. The other child was crushed beneath the helicopter. All 3 died at the scene. The horrifying accident was captured on multiple cameras. The footage showed the helicopter's catastrophic descent and the moment it struck the actors. Investigations revealed serious safety violations. The production had illegally hired the children to work at night, violated child labor laws, and ignored safety protocols regarding helicopter operations and pyrotechnics. Director John Landis and 4 crew members were charged with involuntary manslaughter, marking the first time a Hollywood director faced criminal trial for a film-related death. The trial lasted 10 months. In 1987, all defendants were acquitted of criminal charges, though the families of the victims reached civil settlements. The case fundamentally changed Hollywood's approach to on-set safety, leading to stricter regulations for stunts, pyrotechnics, and child actors. Owen Hart. On May 23, 1999, 34-year-old professional wrestler Owen Hart was performing at a World Wrestling Federation pay-per-view event called Over the Edge at Kemper Arena in Kansas City, Missouri. Hart was scheduled to make a dramatic entrance as his character the Blue Blazer, descending from the arena's rafters on a cable and harness system. The stunt called for Hart to be lowered approximately 78 feet from the ceiling, down to the rest 71-year-old Leanna Owen, 79-year-old Virginia Sorensen, 81-year-old Wilhelm Hospel, and 52-year-old Tamara Durand. More than 60 others sustained injuries ranging from broken bones to severe trauma. Brooks was arrested shortly after abandoning the vehicle and attempting to flee on foot. The attack was captured on multiple video angles, including live streams and cell phone footage from parade attendees. The contrast between the wholesome holiday event and sudden mass casualty shocked the nation. Brooks's extensive criminal history, including a recent release on bail for another violent offense just weeks earlier, sparked intense debate about bail reform policies. He was later convicted on 76 charges and sentenced to 6 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. The Raleigh Christmas Parade accident. On November 19, 2022, the Raleigh Christmas Parade moved through downtown Raleigh, North Carolina, featuring dozens of floats, dance groups, and marching bands. Among the participants was CC & Company Dance Complex, a local studio with young dancers performing in the parade. 11-year-old Haley Brooks was part of the dance group, wearing her costume and moving alongside her teammates near the parade's conclusion. Around 10:15 a.m., a pickup truck towing one of the parade floats began experiencing mechanical problems near the intersection of Hillsborough Street and Boylan Avenue. The driver lost control of the vehicle as it approached the dance group. Witnesses reported the truck suddenly lurching forward and veering into the performers. Haley was struck by the truck and knocked to the pavement. Other dancers and parade participants screamed and scattered as the vehicle came to a stop. Emergency medical personnel responded immediately, providing aid to Haley at the scene before transporting her to WakeMed Hospital. Despite aggressive treatment, she died from her injuries. The parade was immediately canceled, and investigators began examining the truck's mechanical systems and the circumstances of the accident. Initial findings suggested brake failure or mechanical malfunction had caused the driver to lose control. Haley's death devastated her family, friends, and the Raleigh community. Her dance studio held memorial services, and hundreds attended vigils in her honor. Multiple lawsuits were filed against the city and parade organizers, alleging inadequate safety protocols and vehicle inspections. The city of Raleigh subsequently implemented stricter requirements for parade vehicles, including mandatory mechanical inspections, enhanced insurance requirements, and additional safety officers positioned along routes. The incident sparked broader discussions about parade safety standards nationwide. The Bluffton Christmas Parade tragedy. On December 7, 2019, the Bluffton Christmas Parade proceeded through the small town of Bluffton, South Carolina, with local families riding on decorated trailer floats pulled by trucks and tractors. 5-year-old Amir Frazier was riding on one of the floats with other children, waving to spectators lining the streets of the tight-knit community. The parade route wound through downtown Bluffton, with the float moving at typical parade speed of approximately 5 miles per hour. At approximately 1:30 p.m., near the intersection of Bridge Street and Calhoun Street, Amir somehow fell from the moving trailer. Before anyone could react, he landed directly in the path of the trailer's wheels. The driver was unaware of what had happened and continued forward, running over the child. Other parade participants immediately signaled for the driver to stop, and emergency responders rushed to Amir's aid. Paramedics transported Amir to a nearby hospital, but his injuries were too severe. He was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. The parade was immediately halted, and Bluffton police began investigating the circumstances of the accident. Witnesses provided statements about what they had observed, though the exact reason for Amir's fall remained unclear. Investigators examined whether the trailer lacked proper safety railings or restraints. Amir's parents filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the town of Bluffton, alleging negligence in parade safety standards and inadequate oversight of float construction. The lawsuit claimed the town had failed to establish and enforce safety requirements for parade vehicles carrying children. The case highlighted the absence of uniform safety regulations for small-town parades across the country. Bluffton subsequently revised its parade policies, requiring safety inspections for all floats and mandatory safety railings on any vehicle carrying passengers. The Mount Juliet Christmas Parade Float Incident. On December 14, 2019, the Mount Juliet Christmas Parade was underway in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, featuring local families and organizations on festive floats moving through the city's downtown area. 7-year-old Rowan Frensley was riding on a float driven by his father, accompanied by other family members and friends. The parade proceeded along North Mount Juliet Road, with spectators waving from sidewalks and parking lots. At approximately 12:30 p.m., as the float moved through an intersection, Rowan fell from the trailer. His father, unaware of what had occurred behind him, continued driving forward. The trailer's wheels struck Rowan before anyone could alert the driver to stop. Other parade participants immediately began screaming and signaling, causing the father to brake and look back to discover what had happened. Emergency medical services arrived within minutes and began treating Rowan at the scene, but his injuries were catastrophic. He was transported to Vanderbilt University Medical Center in Nashville, where medical teams worked to save him, but he was pronounced dead from severe trauma. The Wilson County Sheriff's Office launched an investigation into the accident, interviewing witnesses and examining the float's construction and safety features. The tragedy's particular horror stemmed from the fact that Rowan's own father had been driving the vehicle that killed him. The family's unimaginable grief was compounded by the public nature of the accident, which occurred in front of hundreds of parade spectators. Investigators determined the death was accidental, with no criminal charges filed. The incident prompted Mount Juliet and surrounding communities to implement stricter parade safety requirements, including mandatory safety meetings for all float drivers, requirements for spotters on each float, and prohibitions on children riding on certain types of trailer floats without proper restraints. The Citadel Mall Christmas Eve incident. On December 24, 2023, Citadel Mall in Colorado Springs, Colorado, was packed with last-minute Christmas Eve shoppers searching for final gifts and holiday items. Families moved through stores while retailers offered closing-hour discounts. The mall's festive decorations and holiday music created a celebratory atmosphere as people rushed to complete their shopping before stores closed for Christmas Day. Around 4:30 p.m., two groups inside the mall became involved in a confrontation near the food court area. The argument escalated rapidly, with members of both groups shouting and pushing each other. Witnesses reported the dispute appeared personal rather than shopping-related. Within moments, someone pulled out a firearm and shots were fired. Panicked shoppers dove behind kiosks and store counters, while others ran for exits. Multiple people were struck by gunfire during the exchange. One person died at the scene from their wounds, while several others sustained injuries and were transported to nearby hospitals. Colorado Springs Police Department officers arrived quickly, securing the area and beginning the process of evacuating the mall. Investigators worked to identify those involved in the shooting and determine what had sparked the violent confrontation. The shooting sent shockwaves through Colorado Springs, particularly given its timing on Christmas Eve when families were engaged in holiday traditions. Cell phone footage captured portions of the chaos, with videos of shoppers fleeing and the sound of gunfire circulating on social media. The incident highlighted ongoing concerns about violence in retail spaces during peak shopping periods. Citadel Mall subsequently increased security presence during major shopping days and implemented enhanced screening procedures at entrances. The Santa Line Incident. On December 21, 1971, Higbee's department store in downtown Cleveland, Ohio, was crowded with families waiting to see Santa Claus during the final days before Christmas. The store's elaborate Santa display had been a Cleveland tradition for decades, drawing hundreds of children each day. Parents and children stood in a long line that wound through the store's fourth floor, waiting their turn for photos with Santa. Around 2 p.m., two men in the Santa line became involved in an argument. The dispute's origins remain unclear, but witnesses reported the confrontation escalated quickly, with both men shouting and threatening each other. Other parents attempted to move their children away from the altercation. Suddenly, one of the men pulled out a knife and stabbed the other man, later identified as Jack Fitzpatrick, in the chest. Fitzpatrick collapsed to the floor as screaming parents grabbed their children and fled. Store security and Cleveland police responded immediately, but Fitzpatrick died from his wound before medical help could save him. The attacker was arrested at the scene and later charged with manslaughter. Among the witnesses to the violent death was a young boy named Terrence Howard, who decades later would become a well-known actor. Howard has spoken in interviews about how witnessing the Santa Line incident affected him psychologically. The incident became notorious in Cleveland history, often recounted as an example of how violence can intrude even into the most innocent settings. The juxtaposition of a Christmas tradition, children waiting to see Santa, with sudden lethal violence created a lasting impact on those present. The case received extensive local media coverage and became part of Cleveland's darker holiday lore, referenced in discussions of the city's history. The Covina Santa Suit Tragedy. On December 24, 2008, a family Christmas Eve party was underway at a home in Covina, California, a suburb of Los Angeles. Approximately 25 family members had gathered at the residence of Joseph and Alicia Ortega to celebrate the holiday with dinner, gifts, and conversation. Children played while adults prepared food and socialized. The festive gathering represented a typical family Christmas celebration. At approximately 11:30 p.m., the doorbell rang. When an 8-year-old girl answered the door, she found someone dressed in a full Santa Claus costume, standing on the porch. The man appeared to be delivering a gift. Before anyone realized what was happening, 45-year-old Bruce Pardo, the ex-husband of one of the partygoers, raised a handgun and began shooting. The little girl was struck first, with the bullet severely injuring her face. Pardo forced his way into the house and continued firing indiscriminately at the terrified party guests. He shot multiple